dedicating the grave of Henry Pittman Looney, who was the last Confederate veteran to be buried on the mountain up here. And they do a very moving service, and it's something I would suggest that y'all get to see if you have a chance. But my talk this hour is on the early history of LaGrange, of how this came to be, and with all things, I guess it's best to start at the beginning. And at least as far as we know, the beginning was with the Indians. People have been living on this mountain and under the protecting brow of its hill for at least the last 12,000 years that we know. The Buzzard's Cave site down here, which has been explored by archaeologists from the University of Alabama, has yielded up artifacts that have been positively dated at least 10,000 BC. So for 12,000 years, we've had people living here. And the Indian tribes that lived here never really considered themselves to be the owners of the mountain. They were guardians, and they took their life from it, but they didn't have a concept of owning any property. The tribes that lived here at the time of the white man were largely Chickasaw, and they made excellent neighbors. They were very friendly, even though the white man imposed on them pretty severely. When the Creeks got very active, the Chickasaws united with the whites and made a mutual war on the Creeks and drove them from South Alabama, and thus opened the entire rest of the state for white settlement. But after that was accomplished, the whites turned on the Chickasaws and the Cherokees, and in a treaty that was extorted from them, they were forced to move west. And there was an Indian village that was just down the mountain here, near where what some folks call Goodloe Spring was. And the Chickasaws' houses, you can still see remnants of them down there. It's easy to tell the difference between Chickasaw houses and houses built by the whites, because the Chickasaws use no mortar for their chimneys. They simply stack rock on top of rock, very finely fitted, so that it would do the same job. But they tell the story that when the Chickasaws were forced to move, an old medicine man who lived in this village down here was quite old and revered by the Chickasaws. And the college boys, because the town had been around some 15 years, the college boys came down, and when they saw the old medicine man in all of his garb gather his possessions, they made fun of him. And he turned to them and some of the other white folks that were gathered there, and in a very grave tone of voice, he said the following. He said, "You may drive our people from this place of our ancestors, but the old ones will not let you enjoy that which you take. For what is done to us will be done to you, for the mountain is of the Spirit and cannot be held by anyone." And with that, he turned and left. And they say that he was one of the first of the Chickasaws to die on the Trail of Tears out to Oklahoma. But knowing what we now know about the rest of the history of LaGrange, he may indeed have been right that the whites didn't really enjoy the mountain because it is of the Spirit. But in any case, the Indians were gone. Although they tell a story of one particular Chickasaw woman who was forced out to Oklahoma, but because she had early in life fell in love with a white boy that lived here, after she was forced out there, she snuck back and ended up marrying the white boy. And I know some of the people here today are probably descended from that young Chickasaw lady. Now, the town of LaGrange was founded because of mosquitoes. The cotton planters who moved to the valley and founded Leeton found that it was fairly unhealthy down there, although it was great cotton ground. The mosquitoes during the summer carried malaria, and often entire families were stricken. And with the mountain being so handy, first one and then another wealthy cotton planter built what they called summer homes up here. And gradually they came to live almost full-time up here and simply would go down into the valley during the day to carry out their business, and their families remained here. And from the lowly mosquito then came the founding of LaGrange. Now, a lot of these families, these original families, were names that you would recognize today. They all had come from North Carolina. They were the families of John Rand, Edward Deloney, Colonel James Fennell, Thomas Lyle, Drury Vinson, Elisha Madding, Richard Pruitt, and of course Abraham Ricks. And Colonel Richard Jones came from Virginia. He settled in Leeton. But all of them eventually settled here on the mountain. Now, originally, no sir, it's not working. You're a kid. No sir, that's my fault. I dropped the microphone. Holler loud, go on. You may hang me later. Oh, you may hang both of us. Well, I'm sorry for the interruption. LaGrange was a permanent settlement by 1823. Some dozen houses and a few businesses started up. At any given time on the mountain, there was a post office, a church, blacksmith shop, 2 wood shops, 2 boot shops, a tannery, a tailor shop, a couple of dry goods and grocery stores. And at its height, the village had a population of about 400. And because of the settlement, the Leeton to Russellville Road was located right through the main village, and it ran up the mountain here, past where the college site is, and the current roadbed does not follow the old roadbed. It lay more to the right, although at various times it's to the left or the right of the roadbed as it exists now, that goes back to the old ore mine that some of you may remember. The site is still back there on the mountain. But the village itself, at its height, ran for more than a mile from Sledge's old field, which is way on back there, down the old Leeton-Russellville Road, past the Lafayette Female Academy, over to where the main street of LaGrange ran off of the old Russellville Road, more over to where the Cumpy House stood and toward the cemetery, and then back to the college building, and then down to here. It was a pretty sprawling community, but because the town fathers placed a great emphasis on education, and because they were fairly well-to-do, thanks to the cotton trade, they established first the Lafayette Female Academy for the education of their daughters. That was run, that was built in 1825. It was taken over in 1826 by Dr. Bester, who was a Baptist minister, and he also ministered at the old brick church, which some of our older citizens may remember visiting, because it wasn't dismantled until well into the 20th century. The old brick church was pastored by Dr. Bester, and he ran the female academy and did a right smart job of it. Many of the young ladies got a good education, but they got a we're on